to completely demolish Maru if Kier's playing his A game and Maru's playing his B game, and if Kier has a grasp, I suppose, in these Cyclones, and Maru's still figuring it out. We're here to find out what's actually going down in this best of threes. Move on to Oceanborn. In the bottom right for Team Liquid, he is Kier.
And in the upper left, in the blue, the man who has kept Kier out of 2 GSLs in the start of this year. His name for Onside Gaming is Maru.
Maru is still coming in as a fan favorite, and if you guess him to win the tournament, no one will bat an eye. But he is coming in, I would say, at probably the most questionable performance that he's been in. GSL went terribly for him. No one expected him to bomb out in the very beginning. And then basically the story is that he's actually been sick for a while. So no further details there, but that's been affecting some of his performances since then. Clearly when Maru is on point and when he's practicing, he is one of the best. He's actually the most experienced player. So we saw on his player card a little star next to him because he was playing since he was literally 12. You never discount Maru, but it does feel like a new era. And, if someone's going to take over the new era, I feel like Kier is kind of deserving of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's been, again, Maru has been this gatekeeper for Kier this year, even when his, I guess Season 1 and Season 2 was really good, but he gets knocked out in the final Season 1, Maru knocks him out in the semifinals Season 2, takes a series, makes Gamers 8 harder for him. So this is not just this opportunity for Kier to say, look, I'm the best TVT player in the world right now, have fun, but also it's this opportunity to get a little bit of revenge to say, yeah, you know what? Not only am I the best TVT player, but you're not going to stop me in my tournament run. Finally this year, you're not going to do that.
An interesting little mind game going on for Kier right now. He's second supply depot to block out the SEV from a main scout, and he actually was going 1 gas expand. So he is getting a faster command center. It's just a little high ground, and the perception right now from Maru's scout should be that it's a factory expand, because you usually don't have to get the second supply depot if you build a command center ASAP. So like a little bit of a mind game's kind of cute. This might deter Maru from actually trying to find that little bit of damage that evens up a command center versus a factory expand versus 1-rax expand. But it might not, because then you do have to account for the high ground command center. So, I mean, it's really small details, but usually factory expand player can kill, again, 2 SEVs is kind of the amount you would say. And then it evens up. But it's a little weirder now. And Kier is also going into some very quick Hellions. This is something that Maru is not going to scout, as he is not sending anything across the map. So Kier's getting away with a couple of things unknown to Maru.
Yeah, this is pretty interesting as well when we talk about Cyclones versus Hellions. We have started to see some Terran players, Bjorn specifically in online cups, because he's the progenitor of this Cyclone meta for the most part, but he started to go back into this Hellion Reaper, 3 Reapers, 6 Hellions, 5 Hellions, whatever it is. And if you dive on top of the Cyclones, they're paper. They actually go down, and you can find, it's not 100%, obviously, but you can find these opportunities. You can jump on top before it gets to 6 Cyclones, and then make the game swing a little differently.
This is so interesting. Kier is doing a 4 Hellion opener into Cyclones with Banshees. Banshees kind of made a reappearance with the patch, because everyone was experimenting with whether or not Cyclones were good. And I mean, I think even like a Battlecruiser was wondering, is it going to be better or worse? But the Banshee was already being experimented with again, I feel, by the likes of a Special especially. He would sneak it in, and it would just be such a surprise, because people were like, you don't do it. Cyclone Raven's too good against it. And the patch came, and people tried it again, and then it fell out in favor of a lot of the Cyclone shenanigans we just saw. So Kier going into the Banshee, and Hellions, and Cyclones, I don't know, it feels like an off meta build, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like not exactly like mine, like he knows that I know that he knows, because actually, Maru doesn't know anything. He's just getting a scout. But it's tricky. It's definitely tricky, and Maru's scout did not see the starport.
It did see the Cyclones and the Hellions, though, and realistically, when we talk about this, because this does feel like some bit of a timing, I like that boost farther just to see what's happening. But don't you just build a couple tanks and keep yourself safe against, I mean, the Banshees are a problem, but against everything on the ground, that full frontal attack, don't you just keep yourself safe like that?
You do, but then maybe Kier's not looking for an attack, which is what's so interesting. So the Hellions could have threatened something, I suppose, but the Cyclones are the ultimate defensive unit. But he grabs it on location 3rd because he figures he has the map control, which he's kind of correct about. And even if he doesn't, he's got a backstab of Banshees. So even if Maru was on his side of the map, you know, waving his hands around, Cure's, you know, snickering to himself like, I got Banshees. And Hyperflight Rotor's on the way, so we got to be having mech. I mean, you know, Maru's already on his way to Stim. And also, even if Cure was scouted, that would have looked like Raven Interference Matrix being built. So this is actually a crazy opener. I love that Cure is doing this. It's going to surprise Maru so much. Oh, the 2 Banshees are so much damage.
Yeah, and here's my question, is the Banshees are going to fly in. Does Cyclone Banshee count as mech? You know, we talked about it. It's mechanical units, but it's not what I think of when I think of mech.
It definitely is. And I think it's definitely the start of mech, because you've delayed Stim.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could argue, haven't said, like, if you went double Tech Lab 2 to make up for Stim and combat shields, but you should be going into mech. And that scan is perfect. Obviously, he knows it's Banshees now. He might be, like, kind of, you know, almost doubting himself that Tech Lab is researching Hyperflight Rotors. But it is. Like, that's... But he might think it's a Raven Interference Matrix. I don't even know. I don't even know what he's thinking about that Tech Lab. Because the fact is, you do now upgrade a Raven upgrade. So it's no longer like, well, it's upgrading. It's you know, a Banshee thing. So I don't know if he's going to be expecting speedy Banshees, but he's definitely going to be expecting mech. And so far, it stayed on Cyclone mech on the ground.
Yeah, we're also 6.5 minutes in, so this concept of Cyclone lockdown or Raven lockdown is maybe that's a little bit late. But the trick is right now is the tanks are going to get sieged up, and Cure's not reacting to it right now, so it's still 2 shots. The Cyclones, you're still going to take damage there. But 4 speedy Banshees into the net. Hey, that's a free tank zombie grab. That's going to feel pretty good.
Dude, this is so trippy. He basically has like positioned himself to be the bio player in this game. He's gotten the faster expansion on location. He's gotten the map control, and I wouldn't even be surprised if he somehow manages to get the first push, because these Banshees are going to keep Maru back at home and having to account for them so consistently, because even if he pushes across the map, I mean, assuming the Vikings or Ravens are controlled, it's fine, but nonetheless, the Banshees are such an annoyance. I know a lot of people must experience this on ladder, you know, and you don't see it very often amongst the pros, but I gotta imagine the same exact reaction we do when we see it, and we're like, oh, cool strategy. Yeah, awesome. Or yeah, really cool.
Yeah, just all the ladder PTSD coming right back. But the interesting thing here as well is we talk about going into mech behind this and 1-1 mech upgrades and things. He's actually still getting Hurricane Thrusters, and it does make Cyclones faster, absolutely, but you almost wonder whether the time of the Cyclone is ending, and then how much value is that going to find as the game goes on?
I still think it's going to find a lot of value. It still has map control units, so anytime he gets a lock on, you know, it's very effective. He's also quite rich. Like, he went 3CC on location. Well, after his second barracks wasn't, I guess, but command center. But still, like, he's quite rich. He got 6 gases up as fast as I think any mech player reasonably could, aside from an opener in which Maru would be already behind. Maru didn't fall behind because of anything directly happening. He didn't lose tanks to the Cyclones. He lost a tank to a Banshee. He lost some SCVs, but it's just not catastrophic to have the mech player be ahead 30 supply and ahead on upgrades.
That's just not how mech is supposed to go, right? It's the bio player takes the map and trades poorly. But there was a Special played a game like this very recent. I know you talked about Special at the start, but this seems to be how Korean-esque TVT mech is going, where Special, or because he's the mech player, he'll go and he'll mass expand and he'll put himself up 20 workers, and then it's the all-in that's the problem.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to shout out to Special. Unfortunately, I didn't make it here, but Maru actually said that he was the one that kind of came up with the 2 racks that was being TDZ. So he's definitely a trendsetter in some regards. But the other thing I want to mention is that Cyclone versus Cyclone used to be a meta many years ago, and it was an insanely fast meta. I felt like it was faster even than Bio, because you didn't have a very strong, slow, tech-heavy style like you do nowadays. So you had to expand quickly, and you had to be constantly combating, and anyone who moved over to tanks first was in danger of being caught off guard. That's not this game because it wasn't mech versus mech, but nonetheless, it's an extremely fast way to play. I love that Maru has basically accepted his lot in life, that he has been out... backroad is not the right way to put it, but he's behind on bases, and he's like, yeah, okay, let's just skip right to the late game and try and play out the air. But the Cyclones are also going to get there.
There they are, and well, here's the siege up coming in from Cure, but the mass shutdown says this is not gonna work at all. I expected this to do at least something, maybe kill some Vikings. This was the most impotent push that I've seen especially with how big the supplies were. It gets nothing done.
It was certainly overzealous. It was going into a choke. against tanks that were siege. At the end of the day, those Cyclones are glass cannons. Nonetheless, again, kind of saying that Kier's the bio player, he can take a loss like that. He still holds on to a 20 supply lead in Army with faster upgrades. And that is also because Maru, again, accepted his lot in life and was like, no, not bio. No engineering bay upgrades. But nonetheless, ahead on the 2-2 at this point. He's got another attack. He's more mobile. He can pincer attack. He can surround. He can multi-prong. I mean, Kier's just, they're both very smart, but it feels like Kier's the one that has the reins.
You're right, but if there's one Terran in TVT in the world that I actually don't hate in this situation, it's Maru. The man is good at taking it to the late game and winning games in TVT that he really shouldn't.
Yeah.
And I think the really cool thing about this is Maru has understood the pace of this game. He knows he's slowed down. He knows what's happening. He's also just going into mech. He has 1-1 mech upgrades, nothing for the bio. He's adding in more factories, but he's leapfrogging mech. He's going into starports. He's adding in Liberators and Vikings and trying to just go leapfrog the TEP one step further and get into that Sky Terran thing, which will invalidate a lot of the tanks and a lot of the Vikings if you get enough, and a lot of the Cyclones. But here comes Kier right up the gullet, and that's going to be a dead tank. Right side push gets nothing done, but this is a lot of damage here at the natural. The question, though, is whether it gets enough to justify losing your entire army zombie grub.
Depends on how long it lasts, I would say, and it's lasting a long time. Kills 23 SDVs, a couple of tanks, a couple of Vikings as well, and it's on Maru's side of the map as well. So altogether, it is a loss of Cyclones, but guess what? Cyclones are kind of like Marines right now, and apparently it's okay if you did a decent amount of damage and lasted a decent amount of time. It would have wanted to pair up with the secondary attack much better, of course. That could have been game-ending if it did do well on both sides. But nonetheless, Kier still overall 20-plus supply ahead, still ahead of those upgrades. It is a matter now of trying to kill the guy before he gets to the perfect army, which is very classic Bioverse mech narrative. It's just not the way that you thought this game was going to go. Kier, if he does not end up doing catastrophic damage to Maru, might lose out onto Tank, Viking, Liberator, Raven. It's just strongest composition, and it's inevitably where all TVTs go if they go 15, 20, 25 minutes.
And Maru's got a lot of warm-up here getting into that composition as well. Kellezer in Game 3 of their series was up 40 army supply, 50 army supply. Granted, he was playing bio, not mech bio, but same idea, pressure everywhere. Maru drags it out. He gets into this late game composition. So not only is Maru best in the world at this idea, he's already played a game. He's already got the mental pathways going about exactly how you want to play it and when you make your transitions and when you take your bases and how you play as safe as possible to get there.
Yeah. It is unfortunately for Kier, I think, still going the way of a lot of their TVTs in the past. The journey has been way different. Like, instead of going from East Coast to West Coast America, you went somehow into Brazil, and you're like, this is fine. I still got to the West Coast, and you're like, I guess. But this is heading in the direction of so many of their previous late game TVTs, which is mass air versus mass air.
That it is. And the interesting thing about this as well, so Kier had a big air lead. He had a ton of Vikings. He goes and gets 23 SCVs on the natural and knocks that down, but he stopped building air units for now, and he's not committing to air upgrades. So he's going to have his mech, his tanks are going to be +3. That's great. These are going to be 2-2 Vikings. They're going to be, or I guess 2-2 Vikings, 3-2 Vikings. The Vikings are going to be so much stronger for Maru than they are for Kier that even if Kier transitions into Sky Terran, it's going to be a far inferior composition.
Here's the thing, he can play it like a bio player and get a surround. He also could have gone for a Mass Raven Interference Matrix, which I believe was his next plan, but he finally finds the surround he was looking for. The Liberators don't know where to turn. Command Center on fire. Vikings not really wanting to land against this particular army. Now, Kier still in a very similar story beat here. 30 supply ahead, but it has not killed Maru, and this is going to become an even more familiar game if this continues for Kier, where he's like, I'm pretty sure I was supposed to win this.
Yeah.
Like, freaking Maru.
Like, is there anyone, probably Cyril. You know, Cyril and Dark maybe, you're like, oh, I've won the game, and then the game goes 20 minutes, and it's like, well, great, I lost the game anyways. Important thing in that last fight, though, all the anti-air from Kier went down, so the base stayed alive, but Maru, this is a little bit ballsy right now, trying to take that base. Kier says, yes, please, let me jump on top of that, but is it worthwhile? Is it enough? He will push through the tanks here from Kier, and at this point, Zombie Grub, you got a lot of Vikings. They don't shoot down.
Nah, you don't want to land against this army.
Yeah.
You know? It's not the small quantity of tanks. It's a big mech army. So it does look like Maru is totally dependent on these battle cruisers, which he was making. Also contributed to a lack of remax. They take so long, so much supply, and so many resources. But if they do come in, clean up this army, and manage to get some type of map control and counter damage done, there's still a chance. I'm saying there's a chance, and Maru always takes chances.
And it's important to point out as well that Cyclones are not as good against battlecruisers as they used to be, right? That massive anti-armor, anti-air burst. We saw the Cyclone kited away, and yes, bonus to mechanical does help, and it does damage. Battlecruiser got tickled. It was able to chase things down, and at this point, technically, Maru's got 4 battlecruisers. He's got +2 on them. They're 2-2. But Cure has the map. He's got a ton of money, and he can build, I don't even know how many Cyclones at the time. He can build a lot of Cyclones
9.
Every cycle.
9 apparently, is what I saw on the production tab. But not only that, his transfer over into Ravens is working out, twofold. Either he would have followed up with Raven Interference Matrix if that particular break didn't work, or they're now available for the battlecruisers. And Cyclones might not kill them particularly quickly, but if they're not fighting back, then who cares?
Yeah, the other thing as well, Cure, not only has he taken his side of the map, he's taking one of Maru's bases as well, and that is the big deal. If Cure is able to secure that, and even mine a third of the base or something, suddenly Maru, yeah, he's been trading better this entire game, at least until very recently. Maybe it changed. But yeah, he's been trading just about equal, never mind. Wow, it was like 3,000 better for Maru just like 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, I guess so. But the income, obviously, for Cure has been extraordinary, and he has been able to, I think, kind of just hit the right beats. So that it's not quite like a bio game, which is where if you are even up, you may have done something wrong. Here, it's pretty much okay. Maru, if he got to mass battlecruiser and gets to play defensive, Cure absolutely could still throw this game. But it really does seem like Cure has everything that he would need. I guess you would argue that battlecruiser Viking Raven is the strongest composition. It's just that Maru's not maxed out with it. So this is why you never count Maru out, right?
Does Maru have interference matrix research?
I assumed he did. I think he got it way faster.
Okay, he does. Okay, yeah. It's been a long game, Zamagrub.
Yeah.
I'm not Rotterdam. I don't have, that memory. But the interesting thing here is Maru's building more battlecruisers, absolutely. He's got Yamato Cannon on the way, but he's getting +2 ground attack. He's like transitioning back into ground mech, and there are like 15 Ravens on the map. Yes, you can shut things down, but like, what are you supposed to do here?
Okay, you teleport. I mean, why is he not teleporting? Oh my god.
Well, the Cyclones can't hit him, so.
Well, no, but still, I don't know. I'd be afraid there'd be like Vikings. He's literally get interference matrix every one of those battlecruisers indefinitely. It's like 2 Vikings pop, and you're like, well, this is stupid.
Okay, here's what it is. It's keeping the entire Cyclone army back home so he can get another base. Like, look at me. I'm right here. I'm the rodeo clown. Like, run at me. Don't pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. I do wonder if the reason he's going back into ground attack is that he is considering the mass amount of Cyclones being the army composition. The tanks will help out a little more if the upgrade was done. It isn't, and I'm not sure there are enough tanks anyway. The sheer number of Cyclones moving in with the interference matrix on every one of Maru's units is going to once again break open Maru's natural. He has so many more tanks. The depth goes on, and Maru will once again live, but he cannot get this 5th base up.
I think at this point, you go north side. You go to that base that really, first of all, there's no sensor tower on it. Second of all, it's been so far away from where the trading is and just so far where the focus of this game has been, where you take it north side, you hope Cure doesn't pay attention for a little bit, and now we're seeing some of the value of those Yamato cannons, of the battlecruisers. It's hard to run away from. And Maru's up 15 army supply, 10 army supply. He has a powerful army. He might... I don't want to say anything about this game, about whether the break case gets broken. I'm like, I think he might get the base. I truly don't know,
It's so weird. It's like they picked up their teacup and pinkied out again, but then they also have a clown nose on. And you're like, well, I don't know what the theme is right now, but it's something. I don't think Maru wins, but battlecruisers are very cost efficient. They're also mobile. The trick is, of course, is that when they do use their teleport, they are much worse units when it's on cooldown.
Well, +3 air attack is going to get shut. Yeah, okay, he's going to target it down. Not all the lock-ons were on it, so +3 air attack gone. Maru stuck at 222, mech, air, armor. Cure, he's got better upgrades. On the ground, he's got +3 armor, so any sort of Viking fight he's going to win, especially with anti-armor missile and Zombie Grub. Count the Ravens. That's a lot of anti-armor missiles. That's any straight-up fight. We've been saying this. Any straight-up fight is really hard.
Yeah, there's 11 Ravens now, but they've already thrown out an anti-armor missile and interference matrix. Once again, Maru just disengaging as long as possible to wait out the spells, but this time his tank's a little too disjointed. Those will be taken out quite easily. Maru all together, everything sieged up, teleport and Yamato available. Very powerful army. And his army supply will be greater than his opponent's if he could ever max out. That's a 41 worker difference. That is going to be huge if it comes down to a max out versus max out scenario. Maru absolutely can still win this game. And I just don't know what happens to Cure's confidence when that happens.
And importantly as well here, you talk about Maru, he can win this game. Maru is mining on like a base and a half, right? Yes. There's a north side base. You say if he maxes out, that's a really big if, because here comes Cure again. I like Cyclones, I will play. He's gonna get a couple more tanks, get the shutdowns. But Maru, even as that happens, he's cresting above 150 supply. He's starting to find more value. And we can see just how much less strong Cyclones are against buildings. Last patch, that base is dead in half a second.
Yeah, that's true.
Less, quarter second, as long as you can blink.
Yeah, something like that. A couple more battlecruisers on the way. You can see that Maru desperately wants to get something done on the other side of the map to try and get this monkey off his back, but Kier is relentless. Anytime he sees a weakness, he will jump on top of it. Now most of the tanks are gone, only the battlecruisers coming in. It's a scary prospect. They do have the Yamatos, and they will get those kills, but if they're ever, quote-unquote, alone in the sky, then that's where the Cyclones can get all those efficient lock-ons. They're not getting blasted two-shot by tanks. So, yeah, it's something that Maru is concerned about and needed as part of his composition. He does need tanks, so that is a big loss for him as he finally gets his 5th base mining. He is at still only 143 supply. Can he rebuild those tanks? Can he continue building battlecruisers?
And the big deal for Maru here as well, he's been able to get Yamatos on a bunch of units. Is every time he tries to break this base, Kier says, no thank you. You cannot fight without your battlecruisers. Mass teleport on top, and Maru says, hey, go home, Kier, don't fight anything, but I don't know, this is the fight. There's the mass lock on, there's the anti-armor missile. Kier gets Maru out of this game. But even if you win Zombie Grub, that doesn't feel good.
That must have been so frustrating. Good Lord. Well, it does finally end in a victory for Kier. Maru absolutely did his Maru thing, which is that he did fall behind. Again, not necessarily by a terrible loss in the early game, 20 SCVs, delayed command center, but he did kind of lose out, build order-wise, strategy-wise, and then did straight up lose a handful more SCVs. And then he nonetheless still managed to adapt in the heat of the moment. I'm not sure how often they played those types of games.
Yeah,
then he was able to play out to the late game, which is basically still, I don't even know. For him, he's thinking it's basically still the same thing, that both will go into air. But Kier basically said, no, actually, I'm not going to play that game. But you saw him decide that. He went for starports, and so it seemed like that was the inevitable conclusion. And then Kier decided not to use them. So he also, mid-game adapted and did not let Maru play the game that Maru is best at, which is Supreme Late Game TPT.
And it's interesting when you talk about this as well. You have to compare it to Mech versus Bio, because that's what Kier was playing. He was playing Bio or Mech as Bio. And the ultimate late game for that style, traditionally, you take the map, you get into Sky Terran, you get into Battle Cruisers and Vikings, and you have more gas so you can make it happen. And Kier just said, no, you know what, if I can build 12 Cyclones at a time, your battlecruisers don't matter. Your air control is never going to exist as long as I can keep my 12, 15, 20 Ravens, whatever it was. As long as I can keep those alive and I can keep shutting down the tanks on the ground and getting these anti-armor missiles on, you can't fight me. You're going to have to play this, ring around the rosy style, and eventually the map gets too small.
I do wonder if he had not been broken so heavily, so many times trying to get that 5th base, if 1.5 of those breaks is better for Maru, that he would have gotten to 180 supply, let's say, and then he doesn't get overwhelmed on that kind of. The last fight was really the one where he lost the majority of his tanks. That was the sign of the end times. But if he didn't, then he really does get to enough battlecruisers, enough tanks, and enough static defense that he probably can then use battlecruisers the way that he was trying to. He wanted to get onto a base of Cure, wanted to be the obnoxious guy, wanted to make him second guess whether he could be offensive with the Cyclones. And he just could never get there. But it was really quite close, I would say, even though Cure, as I'd put it, had his hands on the reins the entire time.
Absolutely. But now we're into game number 2 here. In the upper left, he's up 1 game off of Cyclones, but in a bit of a different way. For Team Liquid, it's Cure.
in the bottom right of Set Delta, he is Onside Gaming's Maru.
So Zombie Grub, we're into game 2 now. Game 1 was characterized by a ton of cyclones, but in a very different way, in a very different opener. When we talk about our meta narrative here of cyclones, does that count? Is that...
Yes.
It does count?
Yeah, I think 100%.
Okay.
There's no way that that would have been something we'd seen before the cyclone patch, just because... well, I guess we have seen it actually. Again, special. I don't think I usually reference special as big brain this much around non-special matches, but I think he also had a fair amount of experimentation with late game conundrums, realizing he was down and out in some of the air battles, and then saying cyclones could be an option. We have seen other Terrans attempt that as like a stopgap, right? Like, okay, I need something desperately, but again, we would never see it in that fashion. We would never see it in that many numbers, and we wouldn't see it nearly as successful, I would say, if this was the past meta.
Yeah, the other question as well, because Cure opened for Hellions, then he moved into Cyclones, and it did feel like it was going to be a push. I almost feel like taking that third base on a location was a reaction to getting scouted. The Reaper goes in, sees the 4 Hellions, sees the Cyclones, and was like, okay, this is not going to work anymore. Let me just hang back, expand, take the whatever, and force Maru to play defensively. So I wonder if that's an idea from Cure that we're going to see moving on.
Possibly, yes. I think he is absolutely going to try and play kind of pseudo mind games on whether or not he can get on-location bases or away with a 1-max expand, which is what he once again is doing. But I do think that he might have wanted to push out. I'm in agreement there. Generally, if you do get that kind of presence with a push out, whether it's the medevac drop or a 2-rack into a 2-1-1 or what we saw Cure do, you can get the third CC on location behind your push. So I think his change might have been just not pushing at all, but the third CC on location might have been his plan from the get-go.
Yeah, you certainly have a lot of stuff on the map that can defend that and make it scary for Maru to run across.
Yeah.
It just felt a little late, I guess. It's like, oh, okay, I guess I gotta go and do that.
Yeah.
Regardless, this seems like it might be a little bit more Cyclone-focused from Cure. We see the reactor of the factory going over. No! Hellions again.
I want to say this was this is not unfamiliar totally and entirely, but as far as recent games, I mean, Cyclones are on the forefront of the mind, but yeah, the Hellion openers have always been interesting. There was a meta also where there was 6 Hellion Raven opener way back in the day, and that was weirdly effective. I remember trying to use it, but it required far too much skill for me to use. And I wonder if Cure's kind of bringing that back too. I mean, it does apply pressure to your opponent as far as their, defense, like making sure the Hellions don't get across the map into your natural. If it's going to be a drop as well, I think it's something you have to worry about. But I guess right now what it does is that it gives you resources to get to Banshees, as fast as once upon a time we got to, way, way, way back. So that's something that Cure is really intent on doing. Apparently this is the build order that he likes now, which, I'm not too familiar with, but so consistently, he must have a lot of success with it.
Yeah, it feels like you talked about it, like the counter meta build that we saw in game 1, and it really it's funny because Cure's not a guy we think of as developing the meta. He's a guy that'll play Korean Terran. He'll play the distillation of how Terrans play in Korea, and that's how that's going to happen. And if anything, he's slow to adapt to the meta. And here we see him, it feels like not even adapting, but setting something that might become the meta. This seems really strong against those Cyclone openers.
Yeah, I actually don't know if that's what he's doing it for. When I said the kind of counter meta, it wasn't so much that I was thinking of, well, he assumes that his opponent will do this, and then his opponent assumes that he'll do this. It was just kind of like if you can subvert expectations, that subvert expectations. That's the weird phrase I'm going to use. That's almost what it feels like Cure's doing, which is like everyone's like, oh, Cyclones, right? And then it's Banshees, and you're like, well, okay, but then you go into like Tank Mech, right? And then it's the Anakin and Padme meme, and they're like, no.
Well, technically, he did go Cyclones. A lot of Cyclones.
Well,
an extreme amount of Cyclones Zombie Grub.
The point in which you think they're going to transfer over to tanks, Cure's just looking at you.
Now, the interesting thing we are seeing here, though, is that Cure is getting more active on the map with his Cyclone Hellion. We saw him active with the Banshees early on, but it was later. It was with more Cyclones. And the question now is how much damage does he get done with this? Ideally, you run the Banshees into one base and you pressure with the Hellion Cyclone on the other. But Maru, he's got at least one tank in the natural. They 2-shot Cyclones, that is a bit scary, but There's the other option. We just run Banshees on top of the tanks, and then there's nothing to defend the natural in very quick game.
That's very true. That could be the most potent option, and I'm a little scared for it.
Well,
He has 2 tanks, a Cyclone, and a couple of Ravens and Marines. Like, as long as it wasn't literally the 2 tanks alone, which would have been quite the bad decision. So that's not usually going to be the fear. And Maru's certainly not letting himself open to that vulnerability.
Look at this, though. Maru, yeah, okay, you're going to play this mech Marine style, fine. Maru's opting into factories even quicker than Cure is.
He canceled 2 barracks. He scanned and had barracks on the way, and then he canceled them. Yeah, he canceled them. I'm just like double checking his base.
You never know.
Yeah, so he definitely has once again tried to adapt to his opponent a little bit. Now, I think he's figured out exactly what it is because it's so strong of the last game. It's the Helmet into Cyclones and a Banshees. Hyperclip Rotas must be on the way. Will not get as much damage as last game, which wasn't even that much. And then he's going to try and have that map control prior to Cure really being ready for it because maybe Cure doesn't expect him to do this, to go into his own Cyclones. But Cure has already gotten the advantage of the on-location 3rd CC. His opener has already worked out, it seems like, exactly the way he wanted it to.
Now, there is going to be a timing where Maru is going to have that stronger army. His factories are faster. He's got faster Hyperflight Rotor, or whatever they are. The Cyclone speed upgrade, you know, that
Hurricane Thruster.
Thank you. And they don't even have Hurricanes or Thrusters. But
That's correct, Mammal.
I mean, Site Delta is a tropical map. Maybe there are hurricanes on this map. I don't know. Yeah, it's fine.
They're called Cyclones, that's why it's called Hurricane.
Eastern Hemisphere, Western Hemisphere. Yeah,
but they don't thrust is my problem with it.
Yeah, it's like it would make sense if it made more damage happen because the rockets go faster, you know, or increase DPS. But there are 4 tracks on those Cyclones. They go burr. They don't go.
They don't go vroom.
They don't go vroom.
This is an excellent analysis. But seriously, you know, Maru might be doing the right thing. I have no idea. I'm not even sure he's 100% confident in it, but Cure has already gotten ahead. And now what Maru might be doing is getting temporarily like ahead in the army, but still overall falling behind because of the economy, right? And then he's playing an almost identical game to his opponent when his opponent has a lead. And that doesn't ever sound very good.
Yeah.
And then in typical TVT, it's a lot of positioning and tank defense that comes, you know, makes those comebacks happen. But if you're not so tank focused, because you're also building Cyclones, is that the way that it goes? Honest question. Maru is now pushing out with his temporary, I think, Cyclone lead. It's about to change. A 6 more on the way for Cure, and Cure with a dominant supply overall.
Yeah, it's funny. I looked at this. I'm like, you know what? Factories are faster. He's getting upgrades faster. Like, this should be a good army for Maru. And he's just down 20 army supply as he tries to make this shove happen. And by the way, Banshees are on the other side of the map, and they're getting a ton of damage here. Cure is okay to give this base up. There's a spot on the left side that he can float on over to and move things over. If Maru's able to go and really shove things up and get into the production and put tanks up against the cliff, maybe that gets scary. But Zombie Grub, it feels like these Banshees, I'm not going to say they're ending the game, but they are doing game-defining damage.
Game-defining is a good way to put it, yeah. Maru realizes he can't jump anywhere further. There's no domino falling here, so he pulls back to handle this. I owed, actually, because I checked out the production. I wonder if we just miscounted when factories went down. Maybe Cure had faster factories already done when Maru was building his and we didn't notice. But at the end of the day, 5 factories for Cure, only 4 for Maru. Generally, I would say that it's a straight-up mistake, and I'd only be hesitant to say it's not because this is a weird new style of TVT, but Cure is showing us the way, and Cure has 5.
Yeah.
So I dare say Maru made a mistake.
It's one of those things, like, is it a mistake if you've never played the style before and you're feeling it out as you go into the game? You know, like, mech is defined. Building, how many Cyclones do we have? Building 23 Cyclones in TVT is not as defined, Zombie Grub. And, you know, plus his economy was a little bit further behind, so maybe his money is staying low.
It is, but it also was the Banshees coming in, right?
True.
Generally, what you do is you get, you know, you afford your production, and then if you stop producing from that production, that's life. But you can see he's adding on the 5th factory now, and I just wonder if he also realized, wait a second, wasn't I doing that? You know, I thought it was maybe on the front, and then that, you know, whatever happened. But it is a little weird. Not that would have helped him against the Banshees. Not that I think it would have actually helped him on the push, but it would have been slightly different. Regardless, I think more so than anything else, it points to the fact that Maru's a little more uncomfortable.
Yeah, and the interesting thing as well is Kier could be even further ahead. He got double armory very quickly, and he pulled a Bjorn. He got his attack upgrade, forgot the armor upgrade, didn't have the money when he went to go for it. So Kier could be getting himself set up for, granted, well, actually, new Cyclone's upgrades do matter a little bit more. Kier could be getting himself set up for a really nice 2-2 timing. He's just going to have a little bit less bulk to that army, but it's still like 70,000 cycle. You can't even bring them all to bear. The arc is not big enough. It's, what is this?
Yeah, well, that, again, this was a meta a long time ago. It was very brief, and I don't even remember why it happened, actually. It was like 5 years ago. But it was pretty dumb. And what I think was at least happening back in that meta is that if you did make a successful transition over 2 tanks, like 6 tanks, you basically were on your way to the next stage of TBT. Both of you accepted that the Cyclone meta was over, and you went into tanks. This seems to be the difference, again, compared to a very old, very unknown, no one cares about anymore meta. But it seems to be the difference, and Kier is kind of the one leading the charge here, where he's like, yeah, no, you don't have to move over to tanks. You get 3 to anchor your army, and then you just go, go, go.
It's wild watching this. But the other interesting thing as well is the Liberators, there's nothing to defend this right here. Just siege them right on top, kill as much as possible. Maru's cut a lot of corners to try to come back into this game because, again, the greed was not there early. Kier had that. So his second armory, much slower. He's down upgrades on that. He was only 4 factories to try to build other things. And still, Kier is the first one to max out faster, even as Maru tries to go cheaper and other things to find that value. And the one thing I guess I'd like, Kier was really good in that last game of taking the entire map once he had the advantage. He took 4, 5, 6 bases and just massive economy. He's not quite doing that this time.
And it is a very different map. You know, we do have a smaller, more condensed map, I guess I should say, where it quickly becomes claustrophobic. You know, like, I want to take that base. No, I want to take that base. So it's definitely different in that regard. But Kier should still probably be ahead in the command center production, and he is building 1 more. He's already expanded, I guess, over to his 5th. So it is keeping up with that, but then Maru is maybe closer to Kier then in this game than the last one. I also think that Maru moving into more tanks might still be the right call. You know, like, that is still usually the way to do it, but now the tanks aren't as involved for either player. One's interference matrix, the other's out of range. And that's what Kier's, I guess, banking on, is that at any point his Cyclones will be involved and the tanks won't. But eventually, the tanks do get on your side of the map, and then there's no more room to micro with the Cyclones.
Yeah, Kier's actually in a bit of a rough spot right now as Maru's found his way onto Kier's side of the map, and Kier realizing this, he's got 5 tanks in production, Zombie Grub, as he tries to find some way to swing around, but this base seems doomed to die. Luckily, he pulled the SCVs off earlier, so he's going to be okay there. But these are the Mech Marines, these are the Cyclones, they're so fast. You can run onto the other side of the map, force the base trade, but there are tanks sieged up at home. So Maru is doing an incredible job. He's got the siege up on the north side planetary. That's gonna get taken down at some point. He's actually really clawing his way back into this game.
I'm glad that it's not pure Cyclone. That's really the way to go.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think eventually you move into tanks, because then the dilemma last game was that you were talking about sky. You're talking about air terrain. So, you know, when you don't do that, when you do stay on the mech, and when you do go into more tanks than Cyclones against pure Cyclone, you know, as long as the tanks are sieged, like, that should be good enough. The complicating factor might be if Liberators made an appearance or if Ravens made more of an appearance, but I don't know what Kier's thinking now that he has suddenly this conundrum. He's not the one that's in charge, he's the one on the ropes.
We saw him play, he couldn't break Maru when he had both hands on the reins. And now he's the one. Yeah, you're right. Maru, it feels like Maru's gotten a tier 3 evolution. Kier, he evolved faster, but it's a little bit longer to figure that late game out. So I'm not a Pokemon guy.
I was going to say, we need Stelter on the desk.
Stelter, please.
She's going to explain this, right? But it's absolutely awkward. Kier might have gotten here faster, but Maru, I think, has figured out that extra little difference that's going to matter more, especially on, again, one of the more claustrophobic maps. Kier has abandoned ship. I got another base. He's going to try to go for a base trade, but tanks well positioned for Maru back at home, or stopping him short of that. You know, Kier does have some tanks of his own, so that if he finally sieges up, he'll be pretty strong, but he's hardly getting the tanks in the right position. Only 3 of them will survive to get that high ground siege. It is effective. It will get Maru's base, but is that enough to make up for all the damage Kier just took?
That's a lot of high energy Ravens as well. He's going to get 2 tanks shut down, 1 just with the auto turret. So you talk about there's 3 tanks, Zombie Grub. They actually don't matter at all. Yeah, it's 21 dead SCVs from Maru, and he's going to get tanks on the backside, because as we all know, Hellbats are the answer to tanks at the end of the day.
Sure.
But the damage is so much more for Maru. He shut down the mining on Cure's third base, he killed the fourth base, I think he might have gotten another planetary as well. He's up 10 workers, so yeah. Cure fights back, he gets damage done, he doesn't get a lot of planetaries, their mules can get dropped there. Maru still has a better control of the map.
He absolutely does. Maru is the Cure of last game, you know. Cure's the one that's kind of scrambling, trying to figure out exactly what the plan is, but he's already lost the momentum. You know, he was the one that's supposed to get here faster and in a better fashion, and it is Maru who's gotten to the better composition, I think, overall, and Cure is the one trying to catch up, and you're catching up to almost the exact same composition, so when it comes to a numbers game, it's easy math.
What's the Viking count for Maru right now? Do we?
0, I think.
Yeah, so this move to Liberators, like this move to air control from Cure as he builds 11 Cyclones at a time, is actually really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Cyclones can lock on, but Liberators are from range, and if you tanks to cover, Cyclones cannot take that fight. Not easily.
But that's why I was wondering if this is the play for the defender, the one who's catching up, because Maru was that guy in the last game, and eventually a surround took out his Liberator ploy. So I guess, you know, I actually really like it on this map again, because it gets claustrophobic. It's very, you know, like there's like a one avenue majorly. So if the Liberators do siege up on a choke, Cyclones will not break through. And I don't think they're going to get us around as easily, maybe, as when Maru tried to move out to the 5th. But is that enough to make up for it? And the way that this game has gone, is Cure going to work with Sky Terran better than Maru did in Game 1?
I don't know. I mean, at the very least, they're equal on bases. The economic divide's not as bad, but that's a bad siege from the Liberator. And now that means 2 tanks are going to get shut down. This north side base is again going to be denied. This time, well, it's an orbital, so it dies very quickly. And at this point, Maru, he's got that 6 o'clock base. He's found a way finally to get up a base on his opponent to really take advantage of that economic lead. And that means +3 armor, +1 air attack, more Vikings. That slim timing when Maru had no Vikings, really no anti-air but the Cyclones. That window, it's gone. It's not going to come again.
Right, yeah, he's at least getting enough to counteract his opponents. I'm not sure he's totally worried about it. Because remember, Cure also had the option of adding on Vikings in the last game and then said, you know what, why bother? There's more Cyclones. I don't know, but Cure is trying to find some positioning. And in that way, it is pretty cool to watch this, because in some ways it is like watching a tank siege and the Marines run around. So we do have some attempts to break open otherwise very, I guess, one-dimensional potential, which is just Maru pushing them into, you know, a weak point. So the game is kind of stabilized, but Cure is in the deficit. 40 army supply down. His economy is also getting really questionable. He's running out of resources to mine from, even though his SCV count's fine. Although maybe now he's finally opted for some aggression. Maybe he's made some room. Maybe he can lift his orbital and try away with that.
Yeah, and the interesting thing as well here is, well, first of all, we're seeing Maru, he's going to go to the Fusion Core first, right? I don't know if that's going to be Battlecruisers this time. It seemed actually really good in that last game.
No, actually, I think it is for Lib range first and foremost. Because the Battlecruiser transfer is very slow.
Yeah.
So if you have the momentum, I don't think you really want to give that up.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. And the Raven lead is the big deal here. So the tanks on the ground, they get shut down. Cure has to defend so much space to keep his bases alive because he is so far behind. That means a Raven is going to shut down a tank or two. Maru can continue to find that position on the map. That being said, though, a minute ago, it was a 40 army supply lead. Now it's just about equal. And yes, Cure is bleeding some tanks time after time. But he's got himself into a fighting... He's got himself into an army that can fight again, I think.
Oh.
It's a little bit weird, right? He's down 2 upgrades as well.
Yeah. I like the Ravens more, right?
Yeah.
And this is, again, so funny, but you can kind of directly compare it to when Bio sometimes decides it's not going to play the air game. It's going to continue with the mobility game, and it goes into Marine Raven. I feel like, you know, Maru would be practiced with that. It's just exchange Raven Marines for Cyclones. And the Ravens are so effective at adding in with the mobility. But then also adding in the Liberators, I think, is a real power punch. You know, Maru comes in with the Liberators, sieges up after he gets a Cyclone push. That's going to be really brutal.
That it is. And, you know, last game we were talking about how Cure was trading better at some point. Like, maybe Maru was trading a little bit better, but not by a ton, and then it equals out. Cure is down 8,000 resources in this game. So this is not, we're trying to compare it and contrast, and Cure's economy is down a little bit right now, and Maru's Cure and Cure's Maru. the trading is a lot worse. It's a lot harder for Cure to put himself in a position to win like he did last game. And the supplies are good, but the value of that army is not nearly as good as what Maru had in a similar state.
That's such a big resource loss difference, and it just doesn't feel like that's what we're seeing, you know? Like, Cure wasn't far ahead on the income, so the resource loss should hurt him, you know, in a huge way. But then maybe he was at different points and we just didn't really track it all that well. Maybe he did have more efficient mining and Maru took too long to spread his SCVs out. But, you know, Maru has an equal supply, but only 1,000 bank. That's actually not that impressive for a 10,000 resource loss difference.
It's his army is 1,000 gas more expensive, though. That is part of it, but the mineral bank is what you're talking about anyways. So this is, it's fun casting this series because I feel like we're winding our way through a new meta and getting to figure it out, watching the players figure it out as we do as well. But for now, that's a lot of tanks going down here. But Cure, he's got a decent surround from the bottom side. But the Cyclones can't fight. They're stuck behind the tanks. And that means that so much of this army will fall. It's all orange. It's all going down. If you move the Cyclones around the doodad, around the backside, flanking from behind, I think that might be a fight. But they just get stuck behind the tanks. They don't have lock-on range. And suddenly, it's a 50 supply lead for Maru.
I'm really surprised that Cure didn't back up and try and siege the tanks. I think what he thought was that unsiege, they still had solid DPS because they do. And if they're in an actual direct fight with a Cyclone, then maybe that's okay, but that obviously wasn't the case. So he had, you know, it obviously started off bad, just to be super clear. It started off terrible. He lost so many tanks to lock-ons, but then his last-ditch attempt to, like, turn things around was, you know, not it, I guess, either. So, all right, Cure gonna try and find his units all over the map to try and buy some time so he can remax, but he's now down 50 supply.
That he is, and he's got a mineral bank. There's not a lot of gas, and let's be real, Zombie Grub, at this stage of the game, minerals are good. They're bought very cheaply. You need the gas to make Cyclones, not as much as you used to, but you need gas for Cyclones, for Liberator, everything you want to make. This is, it's not even gonna be all that nice. I was gonna say, hey, you get 5 tanks, but Cure is not splitting his Cyclones, and that means Maru is gonna take us to game 3. And we have, I'm not gonna say an answer to the Cyclone meta yet, but we're watching it evolve.
Yes. But as we were discussing earlier on, it's not the same Cyclones that we were talking about. It's the Cure Cyclone opener, I guess, is what we're doing. You know, like there's the Cure Cyclone opener, and then there's the other Cyclone opener that we saw displayed in Gummio versus Clem. So maybe we have a response to that, but then would someone just throw out the 8 Cyclone opener versus Maru or vice versa and see that how that works? I don't know if it would work, I'm just being clear, but it does seem like Cure trying to do the same build twice did get him the lead he was looking for, but then the mastery of the style wasn't clearly in his favor. Maru has quickly also learned what he should be doing in this meta, and it got to, I think, a better composition too. I think the timing in which he produced tanks was key to his victory.
That, and he got into Raven, like 4 or 5 Ravens a lot faster.
True, that too, yeah.
Which makes that was how he was able to break the game open in the first part. He gets on top, he kills all of Cure's tanks, breaks the base down, starts to really bring his way back into it. And I wonder, I know you say this is Maru just maybe having a better feel or figuring it out really quickly. I wonder how much of this is just Cure expecting Maru to react in a similar way because that's what's been happening in practice or what he's been seeing happening. And then Maru says, no, I'm figuring this out, I'm learning. So Cure was expecting a different response, and then he didn't adapt properly. So more scouting, you find maybe a better opportunity?
Yeah, I think that might be a good way of looking at it, is that Cure was thinking, you know, you're definitely going to do this, you're definitely still going to go into bio, you're definitely still going to go into that Sky Terran, you're definitely going to go more tank heavy. And then Maru did the thing that he wasn't expecting, which was double down on the Cyclones as well. It's still a very interesting game because at the beginning it did feel like Maru was successfully tripped up again. You know, he was on the back foot. He did not have that 5th factory, which seemed like a problem, but he did fix it. And then, yeah, the composition just got better for him, I think. We'll see how it improves upon as we move on to hard lead. In the bottom right, as the red Terran for Team Liquid, he is Cure.
And in the upper left here for Onside Gaming, learning and growing, improving game after game in this series. For Onside Gaming, it's Maru. The epic Christmas music, Zombie Grub.
I know, right?
It makes me so happy. It's so good.
On the 12th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me cyclones!
12 cyclones cycloning, 11 cyclones cycloning, 10 cyclones cycloned, and 9 cyclones cycloning.
You know, someone already made the joke where it's like, you know, on the 12th day of Christmas, I looked at all the jewelry, like the 100 rings or whatever someone gave me, and I was like, what the heck? It's like this game, it's like I gave a jillion cyclones. I'm
One
also
cartridge
confused.
for every cyclone.
Yeah, this is crazy development we're seeing here. Maru going to SCV scout once again. He did this in the first game, and it was kind of incorrect, is the way to put it, I suppose. I don't know if Kira's going to... He's definitely not trying that illusion again, as he is not bothering to block off the supply depot. But he is actually factory expanding. So funnily enough, he might have been able to successfully work with that first game by supply depoting the wall. And then hiding the factory a little farther behind, and then making Maru second guess if it was the 1-Rex expand again. But he didn't. he let him scout freely, and now Maru knows it is indeed a factory expand, whereas Maru was the one who tried to get away with a 1-Rex expand. We'll see if he's successful, or if he loses 2 SCVs, or an amount of time on the production of the command center. That's the difference you need to get here for Cure.
Well, he's not going to get it with this one. He doesn't lead with an SCV. Maru's always going to get the first shot because the Reaper's sitting there and Kira's Reaper is moving. So first round goes to Maru. He's going to make sure that at that point that should secure that the natural is going to go down. But the interesting thing here Kira's doing, he's going up to 3 Reapers and he's getting Cyclones behind. Generally 3 Reapers, 4 Hellions, you do something like that. And it feels like when we see the Cyclone build, it's less Reapers. It's just get as much gas as possible into those Cyclones as quick as possible.
Yeah, also get a reactor.
True.
It is 2. So,
okay.
Yeah, you know, maybe miscounted or saw 1 building. But yeah, 2 in the reactor, and then he could still swap off with the factory, because that's what we saw Clem do, and then he used the 2 Reapers to moderate success, actually. Killed a Mule, a couple SCVs. So I'm kind of still expecting that. This is also hard lead, which I don't know why that game really sang to me, but I remember it so distinctly on that GSL, is that Cure showed the Cyclone opener that then bopped his opposing Terran, because the opposing Terran is like, what? Maybe it was versus Bunny, because I think it was a Marine opener, and then the Terran just tried to drop micro the Marines against the force of Cyclones, and it was so dumb. And we were like, I guess that's a thing.
It doesn't work like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Last patch, maybe, you know, it'd be dazzling. It'd be so cool.
But it just, you know, and so I think Kier likes the opener on this map, and we are seeing, I believe, that exact same opener, which might just be improved upon, if that's the word you want to use, with more Cyclones.
And this is the Clem build. This is what Clem has been doing in TVT, where you're not going up to 6 Cyclones as quickly, but you get that starport faster, you get the medevac faster, you get damage done with this, and then you build 6 Cyclones and have fun with that one. So the question now, we saw Clem annihilate Gumiho with this build in game 2, the actual real game, or I guess game 3, whatever you want to talk about it, just crazy micro all over the place. Question now, can Cure do that? Can he find that value that the Clem build requires?
Yeah, I actually feel like it's doing a disservice to Cure for calling it that, because I actually remember talking to Clem and being like, did you see that Cure game? What did you think about the Cyclones? So I actually think that this is the Cure build, if anything. It's just that Clem has popularized it so much more, because he also does so much damage with it, and he plays in so many open cups. I think. I'm not even sure. You have to ask the guys, I guess.
the liquid Terran.
There you go. The Team Liquid TVT opener. That's perfect. But anyway, I do think that Cure has a great understanding of how the tempo works with this, but then Clem probably is the better microer. And Maru has already shut down the very aggressive version of this by building a bunker. It gets massively more complicated to work around the bunker with this opener compared to the defenseless quote-unquote natural where there's only a tank. Cure might still try, but we'll see.
I mean, he does actually have a better lock-on on the Cyclones like that, so better trade to the start here, but that auto-turret zombie grub says no. And in fact, he doesn't get out of here, everything's gonna die.
But he did lose a Raven, Maru that is.
Oh, true.
Yeah, Maru lost a Raven in that defense, so that's something to at least trade with. I think overall, that is still favorable for Maru directly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just missed that, but yeah. But a Raven loss is huge, we know that.
No, absolutely right there. So Maru's going to have to be a little bit more careful. And there's still 4 Cyclones on the map. There might even... He's building more. But, well, what we saw from Cure the last 2 games was mech bio. Now we're just seeing bio. There is stim on the way. Additional barracks are on the way.
True.
I don't know how to feel about that. When was the last time we saw bio? Not the last 2 series.
Many moons ago. It's a thing, though, apparently. And then, well, now the question is who would be better suited to play out the TVT in a regular TVT. And we generally would say Maru, but Cure has at times even looked like the much better TVTer, and then Maru decides to kick it into high gear and reverse sweeps him. Seems to be the trend. We'll see if that is here today. But Maru, we know how good he is with this composition. Things get a little more digestible at the very least, easier to explain, because it really is going back into the normal TVT. The Cyclones still play a part, of course, for Cure. That's a lot of map control given to him, but it all depends on the micro. And if we get to a point where it's 30 Marines, 5 tanks, medevacs, then I'm not sure it'll matter. He's going to go for it. He's going to break through the bunker after interference matrixing the tanks, throw down the auto turrets, and then try and use the lock-ons for Cyclone to win out against Marines. But I think that's too many Marines, and the tank wasn't destroyed. So it was coming out of the interference matrix.
I don't think that ever had a chance of winning the game and just totally breaking Maru right there, but it knocks the bunker down. It got a Raven. Like, all those things are really nice. And what he's doing right now, this is a TVP. These Cyclones are Stalkers dealing against a 2-base push. Granted, Maru does have a 3rd, but his 1-1's faster, his combat shields to stim, all of those things are faster. The Cyclones are Stalkers buying time for Cure to go and find his opportunity and get his own upgrades up and secure that position on the 3rd better.
Yeah, it's a decent way of looking at it if you're, Protoss preferred, I suppose. But the push is very, very difficult for Maru to greenland, I suppose, because he knows the power of the Cyclones, and he knows that Cure is probably not that far behind as far as the, let's say, foundational TVT. A couple of Marines take out another Cyclone, which is nice, but Cure has 3 Ravens and tanks of his own back at home to Maru's 1. So actually, Maru should probably get some map control if he can get it, but then I don't know if he's going to find a lot of success moving into Cure. Nonetheless, getting that map control, always a boon, and also maybe a faster 4th. And he would have gotten faster upgrades, but he is a bit late to the armory.
Yeah, I mean, he does have faster 1-1. That would be a big timing, but that timing's over now. Yeah. Combat shield, it's still 20% of your army's HP. It is still a big deal when we talk about this. But that's also, it's a fast upgrade. That's going to be done pretty soon. So Maru, he should be fine here. I love how active Cure's being with these Cyclones. Their time should be done. You only have 2 of them, not 6, but he's finding value. He's killing Marines and shutting things down, and maybe, okay, they're probably mostly dead now, but finding as much value as possible with these units that at this point, they shouldn't get that much done anymore. They're not great.
Yeah, that was definitely good use of the Cyclones. A little bit of scouting, too, in case there was a little hit squad to the left or something along those lines is always nice. Cure is on the defensive. Maru takes his kind of rightful place, at least for now, being on the aggression, but they are really quite similar nowadays. Now, at this point, 2-2, very similar times. It's the Ravens that are probably the biggest difference, and Cure did just use a Raven interference matrix to push back Maru. If Maru is forced to retreat entirely back to his 3rd, that's where he'd be in trouble because of the Raven count. But I don't know. He doesn't necessarily have to back away totally and entirely. He's got to puff up his feathers a little bit, buy some time. But Cure is on the warpath, and he is looking for the push across the map. Actually finds Maru moving a lot of Marines to try and buy that time, as his tanks did go back home to prepare for the attack.
Yeah, and that was a wild move from Cure there as well. You see interference matrix go down to win a fight, or he interference matrix the tank so he could break the rocks, which is valid, right? That does mean that does deny a position for Maru, but it's not something that you're going to see all that often, or really at all. At this point, though, it's buying time because the 4th base for Cure is almost done. He's going to want to take that. And we talk about map control. We talk about what Maru's been able to get out of that. His 4th base is a lot faster. It's going on to location right now. So economically, it's not a big deal, but it is, again, another thing that is putting Maru in a marginally better position in this game, as long as he defends this push.
Yeah, the pendulum's kind of swinging back, though. Now Cure is the one on the map trying to find Maru in the wrong position while he grabs his 4th, which really overall not too far behind Maru's. 2-2 also looks pretty much identical. +1 weapon's going to finish for the vehicles for Maru a bit faster, but you can tell that neither one of them are that eager to really pull the trigger. They realize that the armies are quite similar. Defensive positioning might be winning, of course. Usually it does, but the interference matrix, that's the question mark. You're still having those Ravens involved, and a single medevac drop is going to try and catch Maru off guard. Very unsuccessful.
I love that. Just the random missile turret at the front of your base. Supply depot as well, just for vision. But this is going to be an opportunity from Cure right now. The tanks are going to get shut down, a couple on siege, but they die anyways. And this is a great opening for a fight from Cure, but still moving those tanks forward, especially as Maru starts to get the re-siege. There were like 3 or 4 shutdowns remaining in that Raven count, but the Viking number for Maru makes that very hard to take advantage of.
Exactly. He was potentially going to run out of scans, so he wouldn't have any high ground vision. Also, when tanks fire in a planetary, you do have to manually like unfire the planetary if you take a fight. It's very annoying. So I think Kira is the wise thing and pulls back. Maru on the defensive is often where we do see Maru thrive, though. He is so good in these positions. If he's going to move over into the starports as well, we still have a lot of hope for him to bring back this game, bring back the control. And another attempt to send those Marines out as well is exactly what he needs. The Marines to kind of like stick the knife in where Kira is not looking. Now, that's not usually on top of a planetary, but if Kira is late to the reaction, it could go down. There's a little spready, and he is late to the reaction, so it 100% is going to go down.
Yeah, especially now, we're not at building armor, we're not high-tech auto-tracking, but hey, if the army of Maru's on the other side of the map, maybe I can get more. So for now, that base, it's going to get dead to the tanks, not the Marines. It dies slower. But some of these extra bases that Maru's trying to get, they're gonna get canceled pretty quickly. The tanks aren't siege though, and Maru finds more. Bases have to get lifted, bases have to run away, but this is 2-2 bio zombie grub. They will die very quickly. So the question now, Cure on the other side of the map, can you equalize that damage? Maru's just moving faster.
Neither one of them are on top of production, though, and that is usually the real clincher. And so with that in mind, they're going to kind of reset here. Here, unfortunately, does finish that command center, so it gets a cancel. More SCVs going down, but for either side, there's not a whole lot of mining. Now it might come down to the actual army engagement. Cure with a superior SCV count, exact same army count for the most part. And so that's where we might have the decision made for this game. If Maru cannot escape with this army, it's easy telling on how the game's going to go. If he can escape, then there's still something to be said about his potential. But there's the trap. They're surrounded, and the lift has to come in to save anything at all. Only a handful of units. And now Maru's army supply is just straight up lower than Cure's. Does he have enough tanks to hold on? He's got 4 of them. That's not particularly impressive.
Yeah, here's the thing, though. Cure, he's on 59 SCVs. Technically, his economy should be better.
Sure.
He has 2 orbitals, right? So he cannot mine nearly as nicely. It's triple orbital for Maru. And this drop at the main base, it's going to get a tank, I think that was going down. It's going to get some of these Marines. It's going to get a couple Ravens, which are by far the most important unit in this stage of the game, and more SCVs as well. It's not going to keep Cure from Maru's side of the map, but it will transfix that army. It's not moving for the moment.
Definitely made Cure regret not chasing that down, I think, considering that he couldn't make any more moves on this side of the map. He was halted because breaking a 2-base Terran with tanks and Ravens and Vikings is just incredibly difficult to do. So yeah, I would have, hindsight 2020, preferred to take that down. Instead loses a couple of SCVs and a couple of key units that Maru now can maybe take advantage of. He is grabbing more Ravens. It's 2-5. It's about to be 4-5, and actually Cure is still producing. And he's also getting back to a lot of mining. He's moving his command centers over. He's getting those SCVs over to mine. And it is once again about how this engagement is going to go. One player could take an astounding engagement and win. You know, both players have that chance. Or it could be a wash, in which case the better mining player will eventually win, and that is Cure.
And Zombie Grub, the other thing we have to pay attention to here, it's +2 attack for those tanks from Cure. If Maru stims, he's one shot in those Marines. That is a big damage differential in these fights. So it really is going to have to be on that Raven play, on solid positions, on making sure you're sieged up where you have to be. Vikings positioning well, but here comes Cure down the ramp, shuts down 5 tanks. He doesn't have the armor right now, but he's going to run right on through every single thing, and the tanks will fall. There's one that remains. Maru desperately holding on here, but 88 supply is not enough, and Cure will break the base. 15 more SCVs go down, and at this point, Zombie Grub, the tank count's not there, the upgrade count's not there. What is Maru supposed to do?
Doesn't have a lot to work with, just an extra 7 Vikings. What are they going to do, go across the map and harass? Probably the only thing they can do, and the only thing that would actually be worth anything. So that's exactly where they are heading, hoping to find Cure still out in the map. And, well, that's not going to be the case. Cure is moving back with the majority of his army, wary of potential run-bys and counterattacks and attempted base races, because that's really the last plan that Maru would have to work with. But honestly, a base race wouldn't even work. He doesn't have the tanks. He might have the air control, but with 2 tanks, 2 measly tanks, that ain't going to be enough. Maru will tap out, and Cure will get the 2-1 victory and move into the playoffs.